In May of 2024, Governor Kim Reynolds signed House File 2545 into law, upon whose tenant state Iowa Public Schools will teach the history of Iowa and the United States, including the founding of Iowa and famous Iowans. The bill specifies that our children learned Iowa's history, not Alabama, not Oklahoma, not Mississippi, but Iowa. Iowa's history provides a roadmap of how to love thy neighbor in ways that other states have not. In 1838, Iowa, while still a territory, allowed unmarried women to own property. At that time, women did not have rights, and in most of the U.S., maybe some of the 28 that don't have this, that they were considered property themselves. In 1839, the Supreme Court of Iowa Territory, in its first ruling that we've heard before in Ralph, ruled that a slave from a slave state could not be forced to return to the slave state after reaching Iowa soil. In 1846, founded on the idea of fairness, the Iowa State Constitution prohibited slavery even before the nation as a whole adopted the Emancipation Proclamation. In 1846, Iowa demonstrated its acceptance of religious minorities by allowing safe passage of the Mormons through western Iowa who were fleeing religious persecution in Illinois. In 1851, Iowa became the second state to legalize interracial marriage, a century before the rest of America. In 1867, African American men were granted the right to vote. The 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which did the same thing nationally, wasn't ratified until 3 years later. In 1868, Iowa became the second state to outlaw segregated schools, 90 years before the rest of America. The Iowa State Supreme Court ruled in the case brought before us by Alexander Clark of Muscatine that all children in Iowa must attend the same schools. In 1869, Iowa became one of the first states to grant women the right to vote in school board elections. This was a bold and groundbreaking step, laying the groundwork for a national suffrage movement that would culminate in the 19th Amendment in 1920. In 1873, the Iowa State Supreme Court ruled that African Americans are entitled to equal treatment in public accommodations. There's kind of a theme going here. In 1885, Iowa once again demonstrated its acceptance of religious minorities as Iowa's first Muslim immigrants settled in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. In 1919, Iowa became the 10th state to ratify the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which granted women the right to vote. Although Iowa was 10th, it was only short 3 weeks between the first state ratifying the amendment and Iowa doing the same thing. Illinois was the first state to ratify the 19th Amendment on June 10, 1919, and Iowa ratified it on July 2nd of 1919. By the way, the final state to ratify the 19th Amendment was Mississippi in 1984. 1934, the first mosque built in the United States was built in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It is now known as the Mother Mosque of America in Cedar Rapids. The only exclusively Muslim cemetery is in the United States is in the Muslim National Cemetery in Cedar Rapids. In 1953, Iowan Abdallah Ingram, a World War II veteran from Cedar Rapids, convinced President Eisenhower that Islam should be recognized by the U.S. military along with Christianity and Judaism. Additionally, he was successful urging President Eisenhower to have the symbol I for Islamic stamped on the dog tags of American Muslim soldiers. In 1970, the University of Iowa became one of the first universities in the U.S. to allow a student LGBTQ group. It is also one of the first universities in the U.S. to add sexual orientation to its non-discrimination policy. In 1990, Iowa Senator Tom Harkin became one of the authors of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, of which, by the way, we are one of the states now filing suit against that. In 2007, Iowa became the second state to allow full marriage equality for same-sex couples. In 2007, Iowa became the 7th state to ban discrimination due to sexual orientation and added gender identity, thus making sexual orientation and gender identity protected class in Iowa. In 2007, Iowa became the 5th state to protect children from bullying due to sexual orientation and gender identity. Kind of goes in the face of what this opening statement about this bill is all about. And in 2009, on April 3rd, the Iowa State Supreme Court handed down a unanimous decision in Varnum versus Bryan in favor of full marriage equality for same-sex couples, a decision reaffirming Iowa's commitment to equality and justice for all of its citizens.